was sexy, and then we got used to it, and they were just like, what about the original name? You know? Anyway, so that was my little bit of a feint before I started this evening. Shafeeka Anthony Ali, are you well, my friend?
I am. I'm very good. Alhamdulillah. I can't complain, eh?
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Strange times we're living in. We make do with what we have.
Yeah, so true, so true. And that's also why I'm like, I just like, you go on social media, and I'm not even a big social media person, but when like reading it and stuff. But when I go on there, I was like, enough already, man. Can we not be positive? Can we not help each other? Can we not come up with solutions? Everything is there, them and they. What are you doing? Anyway, so for those who don't know, I do this thing called Baydu Adams Facebook Friends. Is basically my Facebook friends. So whether they're celebrities or not, we find out about them. We find about their lifestyle, things that they do, projects, things that drive them, and about themselves, their family, and stuff like that. And a lot of the time, we're hoping to learn as well, so as we're going along. Shafeeka, as always, with the first question I ask everybody is, tell us about yourself, where you grew up, and so on.
Okay, so I am born and bred in Grassy Park. 34 years old this year, inshallah, and I'm still in Grassy Park. I think the love of my community and the fact that I've got my parents in the second block is what really keeps me. My in-laws are here, my sister-in-law, my brother and his wife are all here. So it's not a community I would very quickly and easily leave, if that makes sense. I married my high school sweetheart, Niaz. I met him when we were 15 years old. And we have 2 kids together, Hanan, 8 years old. And she, at a stage, was actually obsessed with your nose. I don't know if you remember this.
I do remember that. So
cute. A little boy, Amir, who's 3 years old. So they are here, and chances are in the next hour, they will come through the door and you will get a very real sense into them.
So initially you told me, no, you're going to go somewhere else and rather work there with squad. And you're like, no, but that's not my life. My life is it's going to be busy and people are going to be here. So, okay, Shafeeka, you've been, I mean, you obviously did, if I'm assuming correctly, you studied PR and communications. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us quickly about that journey, the studying journey, for those who would like to go into that direction. Is it, what are the strong points you need to have as a person, and is it really still a good direction to go into in 2021?
So, when I left school, I actually didn't know what I wanted to be. All I know was that I loved communication. I loved writing. I loved speaking. So presenting in class was always my thing. And I quickly, from a friend of mine, discovered PR. And basically, very simply, it's basically managing the reputation and building the credibility of a brand or a person, right? And so obviously portraying them in alignment with their purpose and their target, so to the media. So I've always been on the other side of the camera. I've always arranged interviews for my clients. And so I've been in the industry, or the PR industry, for 6 years. And it's funny because you were one of the producers I used to pitch content to. And so then, my path after the 6 years, I actually ventured slightly away from PR. But I would say, public relations is really about understanding people. So it's quite a big thing to be able to listen and understand the message and the concept of someone. So something that they're trying to sell or promote, and then being able to angle it in a way that appeals to the broader audience and the public. And my thing with publicity was always that I wanted to work with people and brands that I truly had an investment in, because it's very difficult for someone like me to put my stamp of approval on something if I personally don't have an investment of some sort into it. So I did PR for 6 years, and I would say things like your ability to speak and write, listen, and also being a critical and analytical thinker. I think in this day and age, you get things like crisis management, and unfortunately, it's part of the job. It's not a fun part of the job, but you've got to manage that, and then simple things like associating influencers to brands. This is quite a big thing, especially in our day and age. But one thing happens and we've seen this in the last year, one thing happens in the personal life of an influencer, and that tarnishes a brand. So you've got to be very careful and be able to really associate or disassociate from people or names or brands that's going to either align or not align with the purpose or the vision.
Yeah. Do you feel that PR has changed since the day you started and where we are now?
Absolutely. I think the beautiful age of social media has had a massive impact. I mean, now you have PR agencies assigning figures or audience figures to things like stories and how many likes you have. In my, when I started, that wasn't a thing. We looked at newspapers and TV and radio, and that was like the big, and online, obviously. And then now you have clients who want to be seen on social media. And so there's social media concepts and challenges and initiatives and competitions. So it has changed quite a bit. And I have been out of the industry now for about 6 years. So I left after my 6-year stint at Rabbit in a Hat, where I was. And there I represented Barry Hilton's feature film, Finding Lenny, and Spear Contemporary, and Infecting the City. These are all quite popular festivals that happened in Cape Town many years ago. Also did some work for the Cape Town Partnership. So there was a lot of fun things that I did. But after my 6 years, in 2008, I started, and then after 6 years, I finished. So then I went into a purely communications role, and I headed up the communications for a company in Cape Town, and we service the biggest fuel and lubricants business in the world. So the guys who hold the license to operate Shell in South Africa. So I work with the guys in The Hague, and then Vivo Energy, which has 26 operating units around Africa. My son has just joined the conversation in the room, so things are going to get very interesting. But yeah, so then I was a service head at the time, and then 2 years ago I found a new home, and I think it's probably going to be the place where it's my forever home. And I've since the 1st of January, alhamdulillah, I'm now marketing manager at a brand called Just Money.
Oh. Okay. Before we get into that, man, I just want to quickly go back a step. We're talking. I sound like an interviewer now. Just go back a step. I hate when people do that. You obviously you've got the experience with PR and things like that. And it's a question I asked a common friend of ours, Shafeeka, as well. And I would like to get your opinion on it too. I personally, even though I play in the social media space, even though I use it as an added platform to everything else I do, I don't always necessarily have the biggest faith in social media trying to sell a product. Am I wrong? Is my thinking completely clouded? Or because I feel, and I'll tell you why, I feel like everybody's just jumping on this bandwagon. And if you see a Baydu Adams with 2 million followers talking about his new Ferrari, 5 people are going to go out buy his Ferrari, or his 40,000 Rand watch, they're going to buy his watch. And I'm saying no. I'm saying if you have 8,000 followers and you say, here's a competition, you can win a 5,000 Mr. Price voucher, or 10 of you can win a 1,000 Rand voucher from Mr. Price. That for me, I feel has more reach. So just to go back to my question, am I wrong in thinking that the social media influences is not that much of a big influence as we perceive it to be?
So I think you're right, and I disagree with you. I think there's a place. I think it really depends on what your message is. So if you are targeting the right influencer that really speak to your audience, then it can be a great thing. I think the problem I have with it is that it's hard to measure. It's easy to look at advertising costs for a newspaper. It's easy to look at advertising costs in a magazine. But tell me what the value of this interview. I can't tell you that. And so I think that's where the sort of the confusion comes in is it worth it? How do you prove that in numbers? Because at the end of the day, you've got a client, you've got to show them that the return on investment is exceeded what they've put in here. So I think there is definitely a place for it. But like I mentioned earlier, it's such a sensitive thing, because once you attach an influencer to a campaign, you attach their personal life, you attach their baggage to a brand. And that can make or break a business completely. And we've seen it in the last couple of months alone. It has gone down like really. And I was asking myself, if I were to attach an influencer to the brand I'm currently working on, who would that be? And human beings. So we all make mistakes. It's just, once people, and the thing is, I think there's another thing is that if you look at movies and our soapies, people get so invested in these characters. They can't almost separate characters or not who these people are. So that's, I think the issue is that there is a place for it. Absolutely. I must be honest, one of my experiences, I'm not one to go to a hairdresser ever, right? Do like normal shampoo, do my own thing at home, cut it myself, whatever. But recently I discovered an influencer who used a specific salon that was in line with COVID restrictions and rules, that was close to home, and that was offering a treatment that I've always wanted to do at a very low cost. So I was a bit worried. Then I found this influencer and she tagged the specific salon in Rondebosch. But I went a step further. Now, a lot of people don't do this, but I looked at who of my friends currently follow the salon because I wanted personal experience, because I know what the deal is between an influencer and a brand. So just because you've treated this influencer lekker doesn't mean that I'm going to get the same treatment. Let's be honest.
Same treatment.
Yeah. So I looked at my Facebook and I looked who of my actual friends like this brand. And I messaged them and I said, listen, looks amazing. I want to go. Have you experienced it? And sort of I took a step further, but that's because I've got the education to understand. Whereas people see someone beautiful that they admire and they intend to go like, it works for her or him, I'm going to do it. And I think that my experience was fantastic, which is why I say there is a place and time, because they hooked me with social media. They hooked me with social media.
I've got a, sorry to interrupt you, Shafeeka. I got a question which I want to put onto the screen, which you can, I don't know if you've got Facebook open there or not. What's your opinion on some influencers in it just for the freebies and taking advantage of that and not necessarily giving back or adding real value, if that is what an influencer is capable of?
That's a very good question. I think it's not something I can really answer, but I will say that there are people who are just there for the likes and the freebies, and that's part of the game. Like if you've worked hard for your likes, if it's become part of your like organic efforts, so if you've put in the work, why shouldn't you be able to get product and review it? But then unfortunately there's a lot of people, and we know this based on the Instagram followers, it's bought. Okay, so the quality is not that great. But again, how do you measure this? So when you're connecting a brand to an influencer, how do you show your client that the eyes who have seen the product is now going to mean X amount for your business? You understand?
I think, no, of course. I think my experience both in the media industry and with small businesses and stuff, it's that consistency. It's being in people's faces all the time. I remember when I started one of my brands, I was struggling big time. And then when I'd come to Cape Town, the first thing was like, wow, I see your brands all over. You must be doing well. And I just thought, well, that's the perception. So let's go with that perception. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here with debt and I'm sitting here with issues and can't sell this and can't sell that. So I think maybe that is all part of it. So when you use a social media influencer, use radio, use TV, use interviews, you use all of that together to get your message out there, because that is what it is. I'm not taking anything from it, because it is such an impactful thing. Not only social media, you know what else I realized today? There's a story about us, it's called Foodies. So what Foodies is, I'm assuming that's how it works, is they would get, let's say today is the 26th of Feb, they would get food that expires in 2 weeks' time. So food, I'm not even talking about, I'm like cornflakes or meatballs or whatever. And then on from the 26th, they would sell it up until a day before, on the day when it expires, because you all know like expiration dates, sometimes you can still keep stuff for a day or two after that, and that's kind of how they make their money. Anyway, so I go there once a month, and whatever they got, I'm like, oh, I need to buy spices for my mom, or I need to buy stuff for me, and because I'm going to Cape Town tomorrow, whatever. And then the guy, I asked him, I love that Bacomo rainbow crunchy stuff. So my sister and I as kids, we used to never add milk, we used to eat it as like popcorn. And today I would buy like 10 of those bags. I would buy like 10 of those bags and it cost like 13 Rand each. And I would just, at work, I would snack instead of eating like slop chips and stuff. Anyway, so the point is, I asked the guy about it, and he said, no, we don't have any more, sir, blah, 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 but we will send you a message. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I thought to myself, there's also just WhatsApp. Such a simple concept. You're sitting with 300 or whatever people's numbers, and you go like, hey, Abakoma, blah, 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 has arrived. It's 12 Rand each. all of a sudden you've reached 300 people. All of a sudden 80 to 120 people rock up in your shop, So I think getting your brand out there is a very important thing. Oh, a question that I do have for you though, Shafeeka, and I always mention this, but I like it to come from the expert's mouth. Do you feel that all of us, each of us, whether we've got 10,000 followers, 1 million followers, or 3 followers, do you think that each of us is a brand?
Yes, I was waiting for that. I love it. 150% yes. We each have our own brands, and it's based on things like personality and character. By the way, are 2 separate things. Personality is something that can change. Character is something that over a long period does not change. So absolutely, everybody has their own brand. And it's actually good to know. My son is jumping on the bed here. I mean, stop jumping, Kanala, my boy. It's good to know what you offer as a brand. So, for example, how people perceive you, And I think it's so important that everybody realize, oh, goodness, this is hectic. So it's so important to know what you stand for. And I think the first question you have to ask yourself is, what is your purpose? And this is a concept I've actually come across very recently since joining the company I'm working with now, is that we work and we live this life for such a long time, right? But we don't actually, some of us have asked the questions, what am I doing? Like we have this in our lives at some point, like, why am I doing what I'm doing? It's like the first question you need to ask yourself is, what is my purpose?
What's your purpose?
Everything you do in life either aligns or doesn't align with your purpose. And it's something that guides you. So for example, my purpose is to serve. And that's a very broad concept. But if you go granular, serve my creator, serve my family and my parents and my community, right? But everybody has a brand, every single body. Even if you are someone who doesn't speak, someone who is isolated, someone who doesn't have friends, that's a brand as well. You're isolated, you're possibly quiet. We all have a brand. And it's how we use that and engage with others around us that can either strengthen our brand or weaken our brand.
Yeah. And it's almost become simpler when you are in trouble, as an example, to get out of trouble. Because if you are used to, I don't know, having affairs, taking drugs, doing dodgy stuff, and like, no. But if you're not, you all of a sudden, your name speaks for you. Your own brand defends you and stuff like that. Listen, you've worked on a couple of cool projects. One of it was Mahir Zaid. Do you want to tell us about that?
I might cry, man. Okay, so something, Baydu, that you know about me. I've always looked for more. When I haven't felt fulfilled with a specific role within a company or job spec, I tend to invest a lot of my energy outside of work to find projects that kind of fuels my soul, that does things to me that I don't really get, And a couple of years ago, I stumbled across Mahir Zaid. Now, I know a lot of people in the Muslim community will know who he is, but for those who don't, he's the #1 Arab musician in the world, right? And he's become quite, he's touched quite recently into the Western. Don't press the buttons, my darling. Niaz!
Don't bet your child.
Bet your son. Okay, you're gonna sit still. Okay, it's fine. Close the door. So yes. So I've always invested a lot of time and energy into passion projects. That's what I call them. So a couple of years ago, I stumbled across his music, and I contacted the record label. They're based in London. It's a global record company called Awakening Records, and I just emailed them. I'm not going to tell you what I said in the email because it's long, but I emailed them, and it reached the director, and they actually got on a plane. And they came to Cape Town and they met with me at the airport. And Mahir was here too. And they actually said that when they come, whoever manages the concert, whoever invests the money to bring them over, they want this person to work with me as the PR director. So they hired someone, or someone put up the money for them to come, because obviously I didn't have that kind of money. But I mean, as soon as they hired the person reached out to me and said, look, we got your number from Awakening. We'd like to work with you. And I headed up the PR for the event, wrote all the articles and featured across Mail and Guardian, Cape Times, he's coughing into the camera. Like he's deliberately coughing.
As one does. As one
As one.
does.
Please don't. I'm begging you. Please don't. If you want to sit by mommy, you have to sit still. So yes, this is my life. Okay.
Hey, you must sit still, eh? You must sit still. I'm watching you. Your mom and I are talking now, so you must Kanala sit still. Okay?
You gonna sit still? Okay. So
Okay.
no, I mean
That was awkward.
yeah. No, he's a hectic one. I'm not even gonna lie about this. Like my mommy and my in-laws are probably watching. Niaz. So
I love when you call him and they're like, no, it's fine. He's okay, you're gonna sit still now, it's fine. Close the door. And then like 2 minutes later, yes.
So this is gonna get loud. Come on, 1, 5, 4, 3,
Boom.
2, close the door.
Boom. Door closed. It's family life. Anyway, yeah.
Okay, so then yes. So I
Sorry, Yazid said I scared your kid.
That's good. We need someone who scares him. So then I worked with Maher Zain and the crew in London, represented him when he was here for the concert. I think it was in 2013. It was at the Athlone Stadium. And I shared a stage with him. And the next day, we went around the city and I took him on a city sightseeing. It was actually my biggest dream that I had for myself. And there was a lot of people in my life who said, you must be out of your mind. What makes you think that your email, for some reason, is going to pique their interest? They get millions and millions of fan messages. But I've always lived my life like I'll do it. I'll show you, I'll do it. Like nothing is too big.
Yeah.
And after that was successful, alhamdulillah, in terms of the relationship that I sort of created with him or attained with him. I then became friends with the crew. So I still have them visit me from Amsterdam. I've got a friend in Amsterdam. He's the pianist, he's also the pianist for Akon. So, and that's how I kind of and there was no financial gain for me. It was purely about elevating my brand, gaining experience, and showing people that I can do what I know how to do, you know. And
you can put that on your CV. That's on your CV now, Shafeeka.
I mean, I got people who called me offering me work opportunities after that. So it was an investment for my future. I also got called to host a radio show after that, but unfortunately that wasn't for me on the cards for myself at the time. However, after that, I went to my mom and I said, Mommy, I know you always say I mustn't set myself up for success. And I mean, my parents come from, as you know, the apartheid era, and they've had a tough life. And my dad and my mom, despite wanting us to succeed always, they always wanted me to be realistic and not set myself up for things that couldn't be attained. And so these things were massive for them. These things were like, what are you doing? Like, do you understand how upset you're going to be if this doesn't happen? Like, don't set your heart in it. And I'm like, you know, Mommy, like if I invested as much energy into what I want as the amount of energy we invest into when we get angry about things like name changes, things we can't control, then I think I'm in a good place. So after that, I went to my mom and I said, Mommy, I just read an article in Oprah magazine about a woman called Lauren Booth. And if any of you know her, she is the ex-sister-in-law to British Prime Minister Tony Blair, right? And she is the sister to Sherry Blair. And she's she is an advocate for the Palestinian people. And she's a river to Islam. And she is a motivational speaker. And she lives in London. And I saw an article about her in a magazine.
Did you have your email geschreven?
So I said to my mommy, I want to work with her. Slow down. And I'm like, yeah. So I emailed her. And I actually messaged her on Facebook. And I said, listen, this is what I do. This is my role as a publicist. I love what you do. And I'm not looking for any kind of remuneration. All I'm asking for is an opportunity to show you what I can do. And then if you see the value, we can talk. 2 days later, wallahi, she called to my mother's phone. And my mom is like, he's a wat vrou go. For me? She has an accent. I'm like, really? Okay. So I didn't expect it. And I went to the phone and who was calling me from the subway in London saying, I want you to be my publicist in South Africa. So I did it. We worked together for a while. And I just got some PR pieces, some profile pieces out in the papers for her. And that was really my 2 projects that I set for myself that I believed at the time were possibly the most, not unreachable, but like the biggest things that I ever wanted to achieve in terms of
but
personal.
Shafeeka,
yeah.
If I could just say something here quickly, it just goes to show that effort you put in, that determination, that taking a chance, which, and it's funny you should mention, because I always talk about it, how our parents, they were almost set up in that way. It wasn't their fault. It was always like, you're always going to be here, you can aspire to that, but that up there is not for you, that's for the other people, And the fact that you did that, I mean, that is just, wow, man, that is just so brilliantly well done.
Shukran, do you know what though? Like you just mentioned something now. So I have this memory of my parents, right? And Allah bless them, they are my world, what my parents mean to me, right?
Yeah.
But when I used to come into the room at 7 o'clock, I think it was 7 o'clock, and Top Billing was on.
Yeah.
We watched in amazement, and I used to watch their faces, and they almost had this, just for what mense. And this is not for us, like we can only dream.
It's not for us. We can just watch it.
Yeah, exactly. We can admire it and we can try and get there, but just know that you're possibly going to be disappointed. And they've never ever said that to me, but that you can't help but be molded by your situation and your circumstances, So, and this is something I like to tell younger people, is that the act of struggling is not the reward. And I think a lot of older people use the act of struggling. At least my opinion is that the act of struggling is, for example, when a young mother, so I was a mother at like 25, when a young mother says things like, oh, I want to get help, I want to get a nanny, you always hear things like, oh, we struggled with 10 kids and, you're the mother and you need to be there all the time. My thing is that if you can create a better life for yourself, never use the act of struggling as an achievement. It's coming out at the other side, albeit bruised, that is. So I am still able to be a highly functional mom and working mom to my kids with the help of a nanny, because that means I have more quality time with my children. With a domestic, that means I have more quality time with my children. Our lives are very different to 30, 40, 50 years ago.
When they grew up. Yeah.
So I have massive respect to people who felt trapped and who didn't have solutions. But I also feel that in the next generation, there is almost a sense of entitlement because my parents suffered. That becomes now my excuse for wanting to get rather than work for. And I'm not saying this is all the time. That's just my experience of people who have excuses as to why they cannot be better. But the only way you can be better is if you know better. So it starts with education. Undo, we have the ability to unlearn. We really do. Yeah. We can unlearn what we were raised with. If there are things that was done to you in your childhood that you don't want to carry through to your children and their children, we can undo that. I mean, I'm the first person in my family who went to study. Like, it ends with me. Like, the nonsense in the colored community about, and I get very upset about this, worrying about...
What kind of words is upset?
Yeah. If, God forbid, my Muslim son turns out to be gay, as an example, let's start talking about the Muslim people in the communities that we don't want to, talk about, that do horrendous things to children. Like, let us stop covering up for the Muslim people. That's just this is quite a big thing because I've experienced a lot of this. So stop perpetuating this culture where we have to throw stones at each other for, oh goodness, like I have to hide because my son is gay or he wants to wear a dress. But we don't talk about the uncle next door who's touching everybody knows he's catching on shot. Yeah. So let's talk about that.
And he's using, for example, religion to do his stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other thing is like an example with my mom, right? So my mom looks after my son Amir, and my son loves dressing up in Hanan's clothing. It's what he sees. He's got a sister. She looks beautiful. So he sometimes gets into her clothing. And my mom said to me, bless her soul, like, I love my mother to death. She said to me, oh, you must just watch out there. I'm like, for what? If my son wants to be a unicorn, because that's what he wants to be. He wants to be a flying unicorn. You go and be a unicorn. If you want to, as long as you're not hurting anyone, offending anyone, going against anyone's rights, if you're a decent human being and you love who you are and you praise your creator, you be whatever you want to be. And for me, all the nonsense in the past about, you can't go study because we don't have money. Like, I'm proof of that. Like, my parents didn't have money. Baydu, if I told you the story, and I think I told it to you a long time ago, on a Sunday evening, wallahi, and if my daddy sees this, he's probably going to cry because how far we've come as a family. But on a Sunday evening, my daddy would send my brother and I on a treasure hunt, in the house. And we would look for money. So 10 cents and 20 cents that he would hide. So in blazer pockets, under mattresses, under the cupboards. We later found out that it wasn't money he hid. It was money he was looking for so that he could buy bread. But we were sheltered because they protected us, which is why my purpose is to serve my parents, to do for them until they are no longer here what they've done for me all my life. And they've shaded me from like crazy things. So it's just like we can unlearn and we can be better.
Shafeeka, another serious topic that not everybody likes to talk about, and I know you went through it at some stage of your life, and I think it happened when you were a mom and a wife, etc., or maybe it's from a young age. But mental illness, that has been something that's affected you. Do you wanna take us through some of those things?
Sure. So yes, Baydu, when I became a mom the first time, 8 years ago, my daughter Hanan is 8, I suffered terribly with postpartum depression. And I think any moms who are on this would have an idea of what that is, even if they have not gone through it themselves. You obviously get something called baby blues, which is very normal, but then you get something that's a little bit more deep-rooted and serious, and that's depression. So I was diagnosed with depression as well as anxiety. And I was actually put on medication by a psychiatrist that's used in patients that suffer with epileptic fits. Wow. And it was really just to completely relax the tension in my neck that goes to my brain. I wasn't getting enough oxygen. And it actually caused debilitating migraines. And I know you and I have spoken about migraines over the years because you're a sufferer as well. And it's caused, it's caused quite more than just a physical and a mental health knock, basically. It completely demobilizes you. It debilitates you in a way that I cannot explain. And because it's not a seen disease, like you can't see it on my skin, it's not something, you cannot explain it either. It's quite difficult to explain it. But because it's not a seen disease, it's not given the attention or the understanding, should I rather say. And it's difficult to unless you're in the situation. You can often say you can empathize with someone, but you cannot fully understand what they're going through. And it is something that I've had to deal with for a very long time. So 8 years. It has made me lock myself in a room. It has made me fortunate enough. It has never caused me to think or want to harm my children. And just for people on here who think that's crazy, when you're going through depression after a baby is born, some crazy things go through your mind and you think there's something horribly wrong with you because you're meant to be in this beautiful, happy space. Yet you haven't eaten, you haven't washed, you've been sitting inside of 4 walls waiting for your husband to come home from work. But when he finally arrives, you want to leave just to get fresh air, but he's exhausted from work. So it's like, you don't also feel like you want to just hand over the baby. I even started smoking after my daughter was born again, something I obviously gave up during my pregnancy. But this caused me, and I think the only way I could really not overcome it, but was really about managing it better. So understanding what could aid my recovery. And that was me time. Something I've never done. Something I've never gone to watch a movie by myself, never been able to read a book finish. So I'm talking about since I've had kids. I've never, and I'm not the only person. This is mothers globally. I don't consider me time, or I never used to consider me time as something that fueled the family. Somehow I always felt like I just needed to soldier on and things will be fine because I need to see to them first. But it's actually the opposite. And we all know the saying, like, you can't pour from an empty cup. And it sounds cliched, but it's so true. Like now, my husband will take them out on a Saturday morning for an hour and I'll choose just to lay on my bed. I'll look at the ceiling. I don't even watch TV because that's like noisy for me. I just need to zone out.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it is a topic that is quite dear to me, and I do try and chat to a lot of moms and moms-to-be, because you actually self-ridicule yourself so much during that time because you believe you shouldn't be going through this. Why? You have a baby, you have everything you ever wanted. It's not about being ungrateful. There is a chemical imbalance in your brain that needs to be fixed, and it can only actually be fixed with medication, as crazy as that sounds.
Oh, that's going to be my next question, though. You know, is the medication or is there something else? So,
Yeah.
but talk to me about the me time thing. Is that do you physically just have to switch off? Whether you're, I'm assuming alone. Do you just, like you were saying, look at the ceiling, or is it? Do you find solace in like reading or watching a Netflix movie? Just for those who probably would be suffering from something like this.
Okay, so there's two things I do, and it might not be, and people must take from it what they will, whatever appeals to them. So this is what I do. I go stand outside and I place my hand on my heart and I look up into the sky and I say, Alhamdulillah. And that is an Arabic word for gratitude, right? It means that I'm conscious of the fact that my heart is still beating. Okay, number one. Number two, I use my prayer mat. So even if I'm not physically making my prayers, making salah, I sit on it and I speak in English. So I sit there sometimes for an hour and I'll cry and I'll say, Ya Allah, help me, guide me, show me, you know, bring forth what pleases you, take away what displeases you. Because for me, there is so much chaos in the world as we know it. Social media, you know, financially, emotionally, we all suffered. No one has been spared the impact of COVID, you know. So just in this last year, how many of us can say we've been spared? None of us. We've all felt it in some form or the other. I've lost my grandmother. I've lost my cousin. I've lost people as well. So for me,
financially,
Exactly. There's been so many areas in one's life that we've been impacted. So for me, it's really about being conscious that I'm here for a reason, and then my purpose drives me.
Yeah.
Am I doing something to please someone else? What I'm doing aligning to my purpose and my vision for myself? If it's not, then I need to rethink it. Because I think I try to invest a lot in others, and this is a conversation you and I have probably had before as well, is that I invest into others at my own detriment, unfortunately. And as selfish as it sounds, I tend to give and give and give and give until I am depleted. But I don't easily allow another person to fill my cup because I always feel like I have to be there for everyone. And I'm sure a lot of people can agree. And then I've got friends who are so selfish, but in a good way. Like there's a friend of mine who completely is about herself, and I love it, but not egotistically at all. It's like, if you're not adding value to my life, you're uninvited. And this is something I have to still learn. So I don't have the answer, but it's something I'm working on.
Yeah. Shafeeka, I just want to quickly just read through a couple of comments. I did put some up on the screen. I think I'll come to Yazid's question last, but Samantha says, thank you for raising awareness. Well done, ma'am. You are very brave to speak so publicly. Angelique says, so true. Samantha says, therapy, medication, and so much patience with yourself. And then Yazid says, inspirational, alhamdulillah. But the question he asked, which probably relates to something what we spoke about earlier, was, what's the next big one for you? Because obviously you did the Maya Zain and you did the Lauren Booth. Is there anything up in like in the cards that they say for you to come up next?
To be honest, right now, I'm so happy. I feel very fulfilled in my current job. And I think the reason I did those other things was because I needed to fill gaps that were gaping for me at the time. I'm very fulfilled at the moment. I'm a marketing manager, and my role actually aligns with my purpose so perfectly. It's about serving consumers, South African consumers, financial advice, things that can empower them, things that can build on their financial wealth. So we offer articles, we offer coaches. So this is free. And we work on creating a website that is rich with information that just makes people's lives better. And as part of that, I'm a spokesperson for the brand. So I get to do lots of TV and radio interviews and interviews like this. And it fuels me. And right now I'm enjoying my family. We're doing a few renovations to the house. You know, we're just enjoying where we are right now, because I think if you're very focused on what's next, you tend not to really enjoy the present. So even though I do set big goals for myself, I do give myself time to celebrate them, because we are so quick to degrade ourselves when we get something wrong. But how quick are we to celebrate ourselves when we get something right? And we need to celebrate ourselves in what we do.
There's a simple thing. Sorry, Shafeeka. There's a simple thing that I learned years ago. It's kind of connected, where it said, when people insult you, brush it off. When people compliment you, accept it and say thank you. And it's I tried it, and it actually physically, psychologically, it makes such a huge difference. Ik voel min vir enige. If you don't like my opinion or like me, that's fine. And I'm not always going to have an argument with you if I don't feel it. I'm like, I don't have time for this. Or I'm going to raise my points. You're going to raise your points. And I must be honest, like many people know, I'm very sort of vocal on social media, and especially on Facebook. Probably 80 to 90% of the time since it started, we haven't really had a fight. People would come with their opinion, and I would give my opinion, and they would give theirs. And then we would have a bit of a resolution. We're like, you know what? You're right. Or I agree, or I disagree. So, and I think the important thing, just taking a step back, where you were saying about looking after yourself, making time for yourself, believing in yourself, being a little bit selfish. It's important for all of us. It really is important for all of us. Just quickly here, so Ellen says, I reached a point a few months ago where I realized that I need to know my limits, giving all the time, because the takers know no limits. Yeah, it's genuinely, truly an important factor in life where you need to look after yourself. Because like you were saying, once your cup is empty, your cup is empty, kind of a thing. Shafeeka, I'm going to let you go very, very soon. So I think for your sake, tell us about this, the project itself. If there's any way that you want people to contact you or go check out the website or whatever for the financial advice.
Sure. So yes, it's called justmoney.co.za. It is a completely digital platform. So it's a website built completely for consumers, South African consumers, and it's all about educating digitally savvy consumers about financial wealth. So anything from comparison pieces, advice, how to getting your free credit score, speaking to coaches to help guide you make better decisions financially. It's all there on www.justmoney.co.za.
So anybody can. So do you need an app, or is it by email on the website?
No, it's website. You can get it on your phone, and then there is a little button at the top that says your free credit score. If you click on there, you register for Credit Sav, and inside that platform, you literally have your free credit score. If you have any judgments against you, if you have any outstanding debt, what your debt to income ratio is. So I don't know if people know this, but a little tip: if you're spending more than a third of your income on debt, then that is a massive red flag. So we tell you that.
What?
How much of income, yes.
A third? So, wow. Yes. I would never have said that, especially in today's age where people, sorry to cut you, but in today's age where people almost need it. Like I took out a loan. Okay, obviously I'm paying my bond. I'm paying maybe for the car. I took out a loan for the kids' studies, and blah, 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 blah. And wow, a third, Shafeeka.
Yes. So two flags, Baydu. If you're using your credit card to buy things like food every month, so to top up on your necessities, it doesn't matter if it's necessities, that's number one. If you are using more than a third of your income to servicing your debt, then just watch that, because you can very soon become over indebted. Now, remember, there is something as good debt and bad debt. We must not forget that, because how many of us can say that in a lifetime we can go through life without debt? None of us. Home loans, our cars. So let's be real. We all need some form of debt. But when it becomes tricky, if you are leading down the road, like you're leading down the space where you are 30% of your income is going towards your debt, and you're feeling stressed about it. When you become over indebted, that means that after you pay your debt and your expenses, you are like, you don't have money to do both of that. And then it becomes over indebted. And then your option is debt counseling. And that's a legal program. So it is, you are legally protected. You cannot lose your house or your car when you're under debt counseling. And what happens is the debt counselor takes say you have 6 credit agreements, right? They bring it all together. They negotiate on your behalf with your creditors for reduced installments and reduced interest rate. And you then ultimately pay 1 installment for all of those. And then
so that's how
exactly.
Yeah, and that's basically the debt review works.
Exactly. So it's debt review and debt counseling, which is exactly the same thing. And that kind of information is all on the website, but it's very important to educate yourselves, because once you get to that space of being over indebted, people try to take out loans to service other loans and debt consolidation loans. And at the end
Vicious
of the day,
cycle.
Exactly.
Wow, maybe before I let you go, and just I do find this topic interesting because I've spoken about debt before on social media. Because at the start it was almost like, oh, it's embarrassing. No, bruh, it's not embarrassing anymore. Because if you look at the rate of inflation, how expensive things are, kids' education, and we don't want to send our kid to a little gangster school around the corner where there's murders and rapes and whatever. We want to send to a good school, which costs money, which means they must play cricket and hockey and rugby, and they must go on tours and blah 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 blah. And then anyway, so I mean, you know the story. But what I wanted to ask you was the debt review. I don't know if you can answer this question, but the debt review or the debt counseling. If I, for example, come home clean with, let's say, 20,000 rand a month, my debt is for the month is 21,000 rand, for example. Does that mean these people will, on behalf of me, bring that down? There's two questions here. Bring that down to, let's say, 5,000, I'm hypothetical, per month, so that I have more money. And then secondly, if I owe, let's say, towards 20,000, okay, that's too much. Let's say I owe towards 3,000 rand. After debt review, am I still going to pay 3,000 rand, or will they negotiate that rate for me as well?
Okay, so it's very good questions. One thing I just want to say, it's an alarming stat, Baydu, but a lot of people, South Africans, do not end up in debt because of lavish lifestyles. Things happen, and we know that happens. So funerals, divorces, deaths, like these things are things that tip people over the edge. You must remember that in the sandwich generation as well, there's like one person who has to look after a family of 10 members back home somewhere. And now we've got to fork out on a funeral. So it's these kinds of things that get us into a space of being over-indebted. So to answer your question, yes. Part of the debt review program or debt counseling program is that we look at your debt, your accumulative debt. And if you qualify, remember you have to qualify for debt counseling because you are making a commitment to paying. So you have to, one, have an income. That's very important. And you have to, based on the calculation, prove that you are over-indebted. So your salary or your expenses and your debt, it does not, like, it exceeds your income.
Doesn't align. Yeah.
Exactly. So yes, what happens is the negotiators within the debt counseling firm will speak to your creditors on your behalf. You will have no more dealings once you sign up with debt counseling. They speak to them on your behalf. They, one, can either reduce the installment, but they do this mainly with interest rates. And sometimes they can bring it down to zero. And if we know anything about interest rates, yes, if we know anything about interest rates, guys, your short-term loans, your payday loans have hectic interest rates. It can go anywhere between like 21 to 27%. It's a lot.
That's ridiculous.
So never think that taking out a loan to service other loans is the answer. It really is not. It will never be the answer. So
just more debt. That's all it is. Yeah.
Exactly. So yes, they do that on your behalf. And so what ultimately happens is because we are reducing, or they reduce your interest rate and your installment, it tends to go over a longer period. So to make it more affordable for the consumer. So you might have been paying 5,000 rand. Now you're going to end up paying 1,750, but you're going to be paying it over a longer term.
Longer time, yeah. And that's your commitment, yeah.
Exactly. It's your commitment, and it's because we have to make it affordable for the consumer. And that's basically how it works.
Wow.
So depending on your debt levels, you can be under debt counseling. Some people finish in 2 years. Obviously, if you have loads of debt, some people only exit the process after 5 years. So it's a long commitment. And one of the things that turn people away, and it shouldn't be a factor, but it is the fact that people, once you're under debt counseling, you are no longer allowed to take up credit. And that just sounds fair to me because you need to prove that you can service your existing debt. However, as we know, if you are so used to taking out or using your credit card or taking out loans to live, then the thought of not having access to that for 5 years is a psychological thing, eh? It actually weighs down heavy. Yeah. So breaking the stigma on one, debt first is a big thing. Second of all is understanding the debt counseling system and whether or not it is a solution for you as a consumer, and then being committed. Because once you're done, and by the way, there's no such thing as being blacklisted. Just, this is the thing. This is not a thing, guys.
Shafeeka, I'm gonna stop you right there now. And I'll tell you why. Raoni's got a very good point. Raoni says, I think Shafeeka should do another session with you. I really enjoyed tonight. What an interesting women. So, if you don't mind, so it's you now. There's Shafeeka Anthony. There is Marissa Calvert, and there's my friend Kulthum Mukadam, who is a radiographer.
Yes.
Marissa's obviously also, you know, Marissa PR and stuff. And we had a problem with her with sound. And then there's you. So I think maybe in the next few months, let's make a date. Give me a couple of points that we can talk on, especially around
Yes.
debt. You can mention your company, and that doesn't really bother me because it is something that's needed, and especially in our community where people are going from hand to mouth and you need the cash. It's one thing that I'm sitting with a situation years ago where I took out a business loan because I needed a loan. And they throw it at you like this. Almost Adams, we see you qualify for 1,800 million, gazillion, $1 billion. And you go like, okay. And you don't go like, hold on. How much is that per month for how many months? And that's the first thing. And the second thing is, Mr. Adams, we also give you a credit card. Here you go. All you got to do. And then I said, whoa, well, I don't want it. So I'm sitting with a credit card for probably 2 years, whatever. I've not used it because I don't want to get into that credit card debt again, you know, and I've been there before. So, Shafeeka, I'm going to cut it right there because I think you and I will have to continue this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. It really was an inspirational talk. And I think just to track back on the emotional stuff, which is the mental things and things like and stuff like that. I think you are so right. All of us, each and every one of us listening to this or who's going to listen to it afterward, you need to take care of yourself. Because here's the other thing, and I thought about it today even. It's such a simple thing. You got all these plans and ideas, boom, you're dead. There's not like, okay, you're going to have this and then you're going to die. You could die now. I could get a heart attack now. I could be in a car accident. And then you haven't done what you wanted to do. Or the opposite is like, I'll do it when I'm this age, whatever. So you've got to do your stuff that you want to do, but then again, set your boundaries, find what's the right things to do, and then take it from there. But importantly, look after yourself. Anyway, I'm not going to keep you any longer. Shukran, thank you, Shukran. I really appreciate you. I miss you so much. I'm going to have to see you soon when I get to Canton. Hopefully, maybe next month or the month after. Tomorrow, I want to spend some time with my family more than anything else. But I genuinely want to hook up with you guys again and see you again. So, thanks so much. Have yourself a lekker evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
All right. Bye. Wow, man. Another interesting chat. How's that? Abida says, awesome talk. Angelique, this was amazing. Thank you. It's a pleasure.